Hello, everyone. So we had another visit from Edgar Allan Poe, and I woke up hearing the name Marrakesh. And not being that good at the world map, I had to look it up and saw that it was in the country of Morocco. And then for 2 days, I didn't get any message, and then here it is. Um, so why don't you listen to it, and I'll explain a little bit more about it afterwards.
Marrakesh. In Marrakesh, an alternate space, there's a hidden world from the human race, where lanterns light and take on flight. You cannot see beyond the door. I looked and peered, the creatures jeered. They slammed on hard and broke the stairs. They threw a book and yelled out too, go back to Xanadu. I stood in wonder with inside thunder. What electric sheiks and miraculous feats! They would hide and slither into humanity's view. I'll tell you the truth, I didn't know what to do. I turned instead and bumped my head. Their energy lifted me off my bed. Is this a dream? I am here, but what changes around me do appear? I am no longer in my room. This must be a mistake. A dream within a dream, or was the dream about to break? I sauntered and swayed. I felt miserable as I moved. It felt like a ship had taken over the room. Then it shifted again. A jungle then appeared. I will tell you once more how I considered that I should be in fear. I jumped a bit and banged my head. I opened again, another dream instead. There I sat in the jungle, on a book or two, and realized they had stolen the Alexandrian books of truth. I stumbled and kicked my way out the door, as the books began to fill all the books that were in store. Aisles upon aisles I searched it on through. When I came to the end, I found Morocco too. That is you? I thumbed through the book. I turned the pages fast, and in the blink of an eye, there I was in the past. I stood in Rhode Island, in a school that is brown. I opened the door and saw my name all around. Within the small pocket, I hid myself well, and then I found a humble desk where I could write and translate the ancient books. No one would think that that is all it took. But I searched the words over, and in a spell or two, that I lifted and lifted from both me and you. You remember, Virginia, what I told you long ago. The ghosts were in the attic and the basement did flood. I could see all around me as the world filled with blood. I went into madness, or was I mad at the world? I was accused of everything for revealing what I heard. They turned all of this upside down until I found you, my friend, my everlasting love, and my return to home I sped. But this is still a dream, or so it all appeared so. I believe we did connect from Marrakesh, as you should know, my dear. It is in the future, a time that was so new, but never felt I belonged to the way the world had grown in view. So much metal, so many chimes, the frequency did blow my mind. I changed to forests and then deserts too. It was there in Marrakesh where I again found you. But the dream wasn't over, and it felt like years had passed. We talked and talked for hours, then upturned the looking-glass. Now, time had shifted again, and I went deeper than I should. Once again I bumped my head, and I was again in Xanadu. Those wretched creatures, both big and small, did bid me well to take this fall. What they didn't know, I could walk on through, then shut all doors to Xanadu. No more illusions, no more lies. I shut down their magic and their vacant eyes. I am no longer mesmerized by their serpents or felines. They had corrupted what was good and made animals in turn to rise. They had it all scheduled to mix the human race with animals, to replace what was good in the hearts of sentient things. Neither one evil, but mixed together they do much harm. It is a species that possesses the creatures from beneath Marrakesh's ground. I saw what they did do. I will tell you it wasn't new. They always begin with seduction to pull humanity through. Then the blood is neatly extracted and the soul lays limp in a spell. I would like to be more positive. They are their own particular hell. I hear their voices laughing, and then an uneventful grin. I look within my pocket, and there is a watch that laid open and very thin. The lady stood there waiting for me, but she was merely a shadow of you. I decided to do away with her, because what was within her was nothing of you. One of those creatures spoke to me. The illusion could no longer mask. I lifted the magic again, and there was a drunken, obese man at last. He hides behind his sorrows. He hides beneath his trees. He lies within himself, that he is justified to deceive. I shoot past him like a flash, and then open the gate beneath, then roll him to his place, in the abyss from which he came. I hope you never come back again. So this is my long story, a dream within a dream. I brush off the dust on my hands, and then I wake once again from this dream. I bump my head and catch my balance, then see that I have a sword and a chalice. A knight? What so? Is this not true? I took from my belt a golden pendulum too. The pit and the pendulum, you see what they do? The dream should never end, but the dreamer should always be in control. So I step back by the bed, and behold, a mirror of a mirror, and so on and so it goes. I will lift myself back up from each dream. This is enough for all that I can think can be done. Marrakesh is not the same, and the underworld is now gone. I step up on golden sands, and the marketplace of wares. I think of all the things I did see, and then I drift out again into a dream. 'Twas Xanadu I stood at last, then that disappeared as a dream. I am now in a safe place at last, where I heard the chime of a clock move fast. Oh no, this time has still not passed, so I float still in time, until the dream will align with the right place and time where I should be. This is the last time I visit Marrakesh in a dream.
So the story begins with, I thought it was going to be about the golden sands because that was the first sentence that I received. And then I actually started hearing the correct message. In Marrakesh, an alternate space, there's a hidden world from the human race where lanterns light and take on flight you can not see beyond the door. Essentially, it's in the world, beneath the actual city of Marrakesh, and it's an unseen world, or a dimensional space. And then he says, I looked and peered, the creatures jeered, they slammed on hard and broke the stairs. They threw a book and yelled out, go back to Xanadu. So there is a story about Xanadu, and it was actually written many years ago by Samuel Taylor Coleridge called Kubla Khan. And I'd have to look and see when the poem was actually written. But it says, in Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Elf the sacred river ran through caverns measureless to man. I mean, it goes on and on. It's a very interesting story. And the background of this story is that he had a hard time writing it, like it was flowing, and he just kept on writing. He had no idea where it was going. And according to the story, Coleridge talks about Kubla Khan was composed the night after he experienced an opium-influenced dream after reading a work describing Xanadu, the summer palace of the Mongol ruler and emperor of China, Kubla Khan. So if I look on Wikipedia, it looks like it was completed in 1797 and then finally published in 1816. So we're looking at, vastly early time compared to Edgar Allan Poe, but it seems like Poe is a much traveled individual and time traveler and whatnot. It seems to be connected somehow to the story of Xanadu. So could he be Kubla Khan? I say yes, but even more so, here's another idea. Does that also mean that he was Coleridge? Samuel Taylor Coleridge. So yes, all of the above. So you have someone writing about themselves in a previous life and then being mentioned once again in another story, because the entities always recognize who the souls are and what they connect to. So they shout out to him, go back to Xanadu. And all right, so I'll move on. And so then he talks about, he looks inside the thunder of what electric sheiks, like a sheik, and miraculous feats. So it's almost like you're seeing these type of individuals that are dressed up and doing certain things that humans are not capable of typically doing. And then all of a sudden he bumps his head again because he's in a dream. He's in a dream within a dream, and he's waking up from one dream, and then he comes back again. He feels uncomfortable about what's going on. Then he realizes at some point that the Alexandrian books were of truth were stolen, and that is in Egypt. And he's finding out little pieces of information on his travels. And then he also finds that he stumbles and kicks his way through the door, and then aisles upon aisles he searched on through, and when it came to the end, I found Morocco too. Was that you? I thumbed through the book, I turned the pages fast, and in a blink of an eye, there I was in the past. I stood in Rhode Island, in a school that is brown. I opened the door and saw my name all around. Within the small pocket, I hid myself well, and then I found a humble desk where I could write and translate the ancient books. Now one would think that it is all that it took. So, in this paragraph, no one would know what this means except for me. And so I'm going to explain to you what it means. I have a story about a few years after I found out that I was reading Edgar Allan's, communicating with Edgar Allan Poe. And it started when I first started channeling the book Macabre. And it wasn't until the end, when all of the chapters were done, that he finally revealed himself to me, and he was seated at a desk. And it was just a simple wooden desk with bookshelves behind him, and it looked like there were shelves next to him as well. And I saw him with a quill pen, of all things, and he says, "There you are, I can see you now." And so we communicated from there, and we kept communicating after that for another couple years. Until someone directed me and told me that in Rhode Island at Brown University, and he talks about the place that is Brown, right? Brown University is a location that has had sightings of Edgar Allan Poe, and so they have recognized him there. And I went down, traveled down there, walked in, looked around, and then was drawn to these upper levels where there were desks. And I walked over to the first desk, sat down, and to my right were at least 5 to 7 books that said Morocco on it. So here he was telling me he goes into this place where there's Alexandrian books, and then he starts going down the aisles and finds himself at the end, and I found Morocco too. And he's saying that he found me. And he thumbed through the books and the pages, and he stood in Rhode Island in a school that is brown. And then he opened the door and saw his own name all around, and within the pocket he hid himself and found that humble desk. So to me, that was a confirmation. This is the path, how he came in to our reality, and then I found him, and we were able to connect at that point. He doesn't mention this either, but I moved into a new place, and it was kind of an old house, and they had little hiding areas, little kind of trap doors and type of things. And I actually found an old LP from the turn of the century that was Dance Macabre, and that's why I used that music. So he says, but I searched the words over, and in a spell or two that I lifted and lifted from both me and you. So he's saying he removed some curses from me and him, and he called me Virginia, which we were husband and wife at that time, long ago, and that's how he remembers me. So he says, the ghosts were in the attic, and the basement did flood. I could see all around me as the world was filled with blood. I think he's talking about how he was able to probably see how the world was filled with wars and problems and murders and things of that nature. And who knows which time period exactly he's talking about. And he said, it went into madness, or was I mad at the world? He said he was accused of everything, revealing what I heard. They turned all of this upside down until I found you, my friend, my everlasting love, and then my return home. I sped. And then he said, well, but this is still a dream, or so it appeared. I believe we did connect from Marrakesh, as you should know, my dear. So then he goes on and he talks about it is in the future time that is so new, but I never felt I belonged to the way the world had grown in view. So he had problems, dealing with the future and what happens. He talks about the metal. And I think, probably our world where everything is, man-made, and he says something about the chimes and the frequencies that he didn't like, so he moved to the forests and then the deserts. And then he goes back into another dream. So there's this babushka thing that we've talked about with Peter, and it looks like he's very much involved in this. And he's talks about the looking glass, which starts reminding me of the Alice in Wonderland scenario. And then he returns again to Xanadu. And then he talks about, the creatures and how they're giving him a hard time. And he says he doesn't want any more illusions. He keeps on asking to have all these removed. And he keeps on going through this whole process where he's looking at all these different dreams within a dream. And then he explains to us, how things are happening all around him. He does mention something about how they try to create a species with humans and animals. Remind me very much of Atlantis. And I'm wondering, he talks about the flood in the basement. I don't know if that's just a house or if it's a grander space or like a flood that we had gone through and so forth. So they all had a schedule to mix the human race with animals to replace what was good in the heart of sentient things. Neither one evil, but mixed together they can do much harm. It is a species that possesses the creatures from beneath Marrakesh's ground. So he's saying within this dark space is where they were contriving these ideas. And so it makes you wonder. It's sort of reminds me of the Isle of Dr. Moreau, or like I said, Atlantis. And then also there's the Isle of Crete that had these human bulls. And we know the whole story about what happened in Greece and Rome, and these half man, half creatures that they put together. And he says, I hear their voices laughing, and then an uneventful grin. I look within my pocket, and there was a watch there laid open and very thin. And then there's someone that's like a counterfeit of me. A lady stood there waiting for me, but she was merely a shadow of you. I decided to do away with her because what was within her was nothing of you. And one of those creatures spoke to me. The illusion could no longer mask, so they couldn't hide it anymore. And there he saw this man. Now, based on the drunken, obese man at last, when he says drunken, I couldn't help but think of Dionysus and someone, or Bacchus or something like that, and how he, was in this whole mode of thinking, of devising all these different, negative things. So then it shifts again, and he admits, he goes, this is my long story, a dream within a dream. I brush off the dust off of my hands, and then I wake up once again from this dream. And he says he bumps his head once again, only this time he has a sword and a chalice. And then he says a knight. He sees himself as a knight, looking down, and I could see him looking down at his armor. And he says, what so? Is this not true? And then he looks. He took his belt, and within the belt was a golden pendulum. And then he references The Pit and the Pendulum, which was one of his stories, very likely inspired by this experience. And he says, you see what they do. And then he says, the dream should never end, but the dreamer should always be in control. So then he steps back to the bed, and he says, behold, and behold, a mirror of a mirror, and so on. So it goes. In other words, he sees that there were so many different levels of the dream that he could go into, that he's just overwhelmed by what he had already just experienced with a few of them. And so he lifts himself back up from each dream. This is enough for all that I think can be done. He says Marrakesh is not the same, and the underworld is now gone. He says, I step up on golden sand. So he feels like he cleared that space where they were creating all this negativity, and he comes back to the upper level of Marrakesh, sees a marketplace. And then I think of all things I did see, and then I drift out again into a dream. So then he goes back into the dream again. And he is back at Xanadu. And it's interesting how many times Xanadu is mentioned, since this is not a story about Xanadu. So I'm thinking that he's leaving a little bit of a breadcrumb for something, or something to look into here. And then that whole dream disappeared as well. The whole Marrakesh experience is gone. And then he hears a chime, almost a clock moving fast, which reminds me of the time travel. And he floats still into the dream, aligns with the right place and the time where he should be. This is the last time I visit Marrakesh in a dream. So the work is done. He doesn't need to go there anymore. And I've talked about this before with many people. Once you have resolved something, there's no need to return. If you find yourself returning, it's not fully resolved. And also, we've talked about being on the proper timeline. And this is something else we're going to work on. But this time has still not passed, so I float still in time until the dream will align with the right place and the time where I should be. And so that he knows that he has to reset himself to the right place and time where he should be. So with completion of review of this poem and what I gained from it, and I'm sure that there's other nuggets of truth in there, in little hints of things that we might understand about our world. I see that, he reminds us to be in control of our dream space. Don't feel that you're the victim. And also, he talks about being in control of your own timeline. So with that said, I think this is a good place to finish. Thank you for listening.